Hello and welcome to another episode of the Life Strategies Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Jones, and today we're going to talk about something that hits close to home for so many of us. Grieving while caring for your parent who's going through Alzheimer's. Specifically, we're going to talk about how they progress through this terrible disease. Alzheimer's doesn't just impact the person diagnosed, it affects the whole family. If you're caring for a parent with Alzheimer's, you know how deeply challenging it is, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Today, I hope to offer some guidance, rooted in faith, hope, and love, on how to cope with that grief, both while your mom or dad is still with you, and after they've passed. As always, I'm going to weave in some scripture to help us frame this journey and offer some practical strategies to keep yourself healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually throughout this transition. If you're listening to this, you probably know how Alzheimer's slowly takes away bits and pieces of who our loved ones once were. It's as if you're grieving them even while they're still physically with you. The mom or dad you grew up knowing isn't fully present anymore, and that kind of ambiguous loss is deeply painful. The confusion, frustration, and heartbreak that come with this role reversal, caring for the mom or dad who once cared for you, are heavy burdens. But let's turn to scripture for a bit of comfort here. In Matthew 5:4, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." I love this verse because it's a reminder that God sees us in our sorrow. He knows the weight you're carrying. You're not grieving alone. Whether you're mourning the loss of your mom or dad's memory, their independence, or preparing yourself for their eventual passing, God is right there with you. And for those of us grieving the mom or dad we once knew, it's okay to acknowledge this grief. It's not just sadness over a diagnosis. It's a loss of shared memories, conversations, and even the recognition in their eyes when they see you. That's something no one can fully, truly prepare for. But remember, we do not grieve as those who have no hope. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 tells us that while we grieve, we do so knowing that death is not the end. This is the hope we cling to as Christians. As caregivers, the constant responsibility can make us feel isolated and exhausted. You might be facing a situation where your mom or dad doesn't remember who you are, but you're still the one who's there every day, helping with basic tasks, showing love and compassion. And it's hard, so hard. But, as 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Cast all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. You don't have to carry this burden alone." One of the things I learned from caring for my own mother is that it's so important to take care of yourself too. Self-care is not selfish, it's necessary, especially when you're in the role of a caregiver. Caregiving can be emotionally, mentally, and physically draining. This is why prioritizing your own health, nutrition, exercise, and spiritual well-being is vital. It's the only way you'll have the strength to continue caring for your mom or dad. Here's the deal. Nutrition and exercise don't just improve your physical health. They play a huge role in your emotional resilience as well. When we take care of our bodies, we have more energy, more mental clarity, and greater emotional bandwidth to handle the overwhelming demands of caregiving. I want to emphasize that even in these times of sadness and grief, making healthy choices around food and movement can keep you grounded. It might seem small, but eating right and getting some daily movement can make a big difference in how you manage stress and emotions. You might have heard me talk about this in previous episodes, but it's worth repeating. When we nourish our bodies, we are also giving ourselves the tools to cope better with the daily stressors of life. You may not always feel like cooking a healthy meal or going for a walk, but I encourage you to make it a priority. Not as another task to check off your list, but as a form of love. Love for yourself and love for your mom or dad. Now let's talk a little about the practical side of caregiving while coping with your grief. One thing I encourage everyone to do is set up a support system. Alzheimer's can make caregiving feel incredibly isolating, but you don't have to go through it alone. Lean on your family, friends, or a faith-based community. Sometimes, just talking about your feelings can be a huge release. And when it comes to grief, I want to remind you that it's okay to grieve in stages. Alzheimer's is a long goodbye. You might find yourself grieving little by little as your mom or dad's condition worsens. But it's important to honor that grief rather than suppress it. Let yourself feel the sadness, the anger, the frustration. And when those feelings become overwhelming, bring them to God. He can carry what we cannot. Another thing to keep in mind is that caring for your mom or dad gives you the opportunity to serve and love in a way that's so deeply meaningful. Yes, it's incredibly hard, but it's also an act of profound love. In Galatians 6:2 it says, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." As you care for your mom or dad, you are living out this scripture. You are living out faith, hope, and love every single day. And being a caregiver to your parent gives honor thy mother and father a whole new meaning to you. I also want to touch on what happens when your mom or dad passes. If you've been grieving their decline for years, it might feel strange when they're actually gone. You might think, why am I still grieving when I've already been through so much loss? The truth is, you're grieving the finality of death. The last goodbye is always hard. But remember this, our loved ones are not lost. They are with the Lord. Revelation 21:4 promises that in heaven, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. As believers, we have that hope. It's not that we shouldn't feel sadness, but that we can look forward to the day when we will be reunited with our loved ones, whole and healed. Before we close, I want to leave you with some final encouragement. If you're in the thick of caregiving right now, know that you are seen, know that you are loved, and know that what you're doing matters. Even on the hardest days, take time to care for yourself, nurture your body, mind, and spirit, and lean on your faith to get you through the tough moments. There is hope, and there is love, even in the midst of grief. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Life Strategies Podcast. I sincerely hope it has been of value to you. And as always, I wish you faith, hope, and love in your life. Bye for now. See you next time.